This week in the world of sports, the NTT Indycar Series season continues with the Good Ranchers 250 in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. This is the Monday Report, starting now. All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is Monday, March 9th, 2026, and this is the Monday Report. I'm your host, H. James K., and today we are going to be talking about the Good Ranchers 250 at Phoenix Raceway in Phoenix, Arizona, where the Indy cars were racing on Saturday afternoon. What a brilliant race this was. It was one of the probably 5 best short ovals I've ever seen. Like right up there with Milwaukee, the first Milwaukee race when they came back a couple years ago. You know, that gateway race back in like 2019 that had the really super crazy finish. I was at that race. You know, there's been several, but this one was so good. So good. So right off the top, Joseph Newgarden, driving for Team Penske, won in dramatic fashion. He pit for tires late during a late caution, which allowed him to drive to the front and win the race because of new tires. Joseph Newgarden is interesting because he has won something like 50% of all of his career wins are on ovals. And of the last, 25 short ovals, he's won, 12 of them, I think is what they said. So he's kind of like the head honcho when it comes to short oval racing in Indy cars. And he was quick all day, but he wasn't, in the hunt. He was just kind of there. And then in the last stint, when he changed pit for tires, it was just bang, there he was. He was the only one with the hot hand when it really mattered. And it was impressive. Kyle Kirkwood, driving for Andretti Global, finished second. He had a quiet race. He was one of these people who he pit early on the first caution and really got off crazy off sequence, not even close to what the main sequence was. So he was kind of going back and forth between being really up front and really not, depending on where the main sequence for pit stops was. And at the end of the race, he decided not to pit for new tires with, there was probably 30 laps to go in the race when this final caution happened. And he, along with the top, 6 drivers, it was David Malukas and Kyle Kirkwood and, Christian Rasmussen and Will Power and Marcus Armstrong and someone else whose name is escaping me at the moment, just decided not to pit, and they decided to stay out. And it worked out for them a little bit, but as was obvious, getting the fresh tires before that restart was definitely the correct move because basically everyone behind them pit for new tires. But Kirkwood had a solid day. It's one of those where he has quietly become really good at ovals, but no one really talks about it because he doesn't make anything splashy. He doesn't win usually on those short ovals, and he doesn't make any of these crazy passes, but he's always just kind of there at the front. And it's one of these things where he is the guy who wins the Indy 500 out of nowhere. And no one ever thinks about, he's an oval guy. But he could be actually an oval guy. Right now, I would regard him as kind of a street courses ace, and yet he's always there in the front in these short ovals. It was impressive. But yeah, he was very quiet. He was nothing flashy. He was just kind of tootling around out there, and when it counted, he was where he needed to be. Finishing third was fellow Penske driver David Malukas. He got pole in his first career pole, and he looked really dominant early on in the race. He looked like he had all of the cards. But other drivers, Christian Rasmussen, cough cough, just had a better car, and then late strategy mistakes, and there was a pit snafu in the middle of the race that just kind of not knocked him out of contention, but it took him away from the front long enough for other drivers to kind of stake a claim, so to speak. But he finished third, and I think this is... David Malukas is a guy who I would not be surprised at all if he won the Indy 500 this year, just because he's always been good at ovals, and now he's with Penske, so he's just really, really good. And I know he doesn't want to be called Little Dave anymore, but Little Dave. Way to go, Little Dave. Finishing fourth was Pato O'Ward, driving for McLaren. He pitted for new tires along with Newgarden and most of the rest of the field late. He was one of the drivers who was pitting on the earlier side of the pit sequence every single time. And he would always be kind of a hard charger early on, and then he would fade. It's the whole idea of comers and goers, and he was kind of a goer. Whereas guys like Christian Rasmussen would really come on strong as the stint went along. But yeah, see, he pit for new tires, and him and Newgarden were kind of scything through the field, and he just kind of got to like third place, and that was basically like the limit of his grip. And Newgarden passed him and got to the front and won. But I think this is a really good result for Pato O'Ward. It keeps him towards the front of the championship hunt, which I think is really important, because if he can keep doing this like fifth place, third place, second place, fourth place, third place, a win, sixth place, fifth place, and just all of this season just kind of racking up top tens, he'll win the championship. Because, well, yeah, winning 7 races and, being consistently like fourth best in the pecking order, you can win if you're just consistent enough. So I'm okay. I was totally okay with Pato O'Ward's fourth place finish. Would I have loved to see him win? Absolutely. This was the kind of race that he can win, where you can just hard charger, no need to save fuel. It's all about going fast. He's really good at those. But sadly, he had late in the race, I think he said in the last 2 stints, that he had issues with both front instability and rear instability. And it was one of those where he couldn't, it takes a lot of commitment to pass at Phoenix, and he just didn't have it. So he struggled to make the moves necessary to win. He just didn't have the pace. So that's why he didn't win. Marcus Armstrong, driving for Chip Ganassi Racing, finished 5th on the day. So he's quietly becoming one of the better oval guys. And he's right up there with Rasmussen and David Malukas as these guys who's like, yeah, he's pretty good at ovals. Excuse me, I had to take a drink. All right. Marcus Armstrong has definitely gone to the Scott Dixon school of being good at ovals, where you're not flashy and you don't make any wow moves, but you're just kind of quietly really quick when it matters. So he impressed me, honestly. He was always near the front. He was really good with his tires, and he managed, he didn't have anything for the leaders, but he was a very solid 5th, 6th, 7th guy most of the day. Coming in at 6th place was Alexander Rossi, driving for Ed Carpenter Racing, or ECR as they insist on being called now. I guess they are just ECR now. They are not Ed Carpenter Racing. Either way, Alexander Rossi had, I think, a great result. The ECR cars looked really fast on the day, and we'll get to his teammate in a second. But Rossi just didn't have the race-winning pace, but he was definitely quick enough to get towards the front. And excuse me. He could get to the front, but he couldn't get to the lead. He could get towards the front, but he couldn't get to the front. And he had a pit mistake. There was a problem in his pits that kind of took him to the middle, towards the back of the midfield, but he managed to crawl his way back up to 6th. And I thought this was a really impressive result for ECR. They've struggled so mightily the last couple of years. It was good to see them having good results. All right. And now, instead of continuing just going down the order, we're going to jump to 14th place to talk about Christian Rasmussen. Christian Rasmussen. Man, I am sorry. Christian Rasmussen was the fastest driver on track. He had 67 passes on the day. He had over 70 passes. I think it was 75. He led 67 laps. He was just so good. I think Joey Logano said it best when he said it, his guts to it was like his guts to brains ratio or something like that. Because he was making passes where you're just like, dude, there is no need to be that bold. And it was one of those where he's a guy like Babe Ruth. It's like, live by the sword, die by the sword. So his bold moves got him to the front over and over and over and got him to stay there, but eventually he made a move that was too bold. He came together with Will Power late in the race, and they bumped and hit the wall, and it didn't take either of them out of the race, but it definitely damaged Rasmussen's car, and he tried to hold on, but his car kept like kind of unraveling and getting worse and worse and worse until eventually he crashed and hit the wall. He finished the race in 14th. He finished, but it was clear that his car wasn't going to have it. Now, if that crash doesn't happen, and when I get to Will Power, I'll explain kind of what happened with that crash. When that crash happened, if that crash doesn't happen, he's going to win the race easily. He would have won the race. Nobody could touch him. Pato would take the lead, pitting early, doing a very big undercut, and he'd stay in the lead for about 4 laps, and then Christian Rasmussen would drive by him like he was standing still, and then he'd scythe through a whole bunch of cars in front of them and just stay. He did it over and over and over and over and over. It was a sight to behold. I think the broadcast was calling him the Sultan of Sketch, because, man, his car is on the ragged edge. Rasmussen, he might be one of my early favorites for the Indy 500 just because his driving style, how good he is on oval, and how the Ed Carpenter guys are always good at Indianapolis. I want to see him in a McLaren, to be honest with you. I want to see him driving a better car, because I think this is a guy who, yes, he is very much elbows out, no quarter, take no prisoners, but he's in bad equipment. I want to see him in really good equipment, because I think he could just dominate. But yeah, Christian Rasmussen, he was so good. I was so gutted that for how his race ended, considering he was clearly the class of the field. He was clearly going to win the race, but it is what it is. Next, let's talk about Dennis Hauger, who finished 15th. The only reason I'm talking about Dennis Hauger, not only is he the highest finishing rookie on the day, higher than Mick Schumacher, who I'll talk about later, but he had a spin early in the race that was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. He spun on the backstretch, and he saved it without hitting the wall. He let go of the brakes and hit the throttle and kind of smoked the tires, and he was able to stop the car from spinning, and he was going backwards, and he started driving in reverse and then did a J-turn to turn back around and retook the track. It was, those who have not seen Dennis Hauger's save at Phoenix, go find it on YouTube. The IndyCar YouTube channel has posted it. It's incredible. It was mind-blowing seeing that happen. Other than that, Dennis Hauger was basically anonymous. Next, let's talk about Will Power. So Will Power finished 16th. His struggles continue. He crashed in qualifying, started last. Then he drove to the front, had some issues, had to drive back to the front, and then he had his issues with Rasmussen and finished well down in the order, finishing 16th. So the crash. Okay, so what happened is Will Power is towards the front. He's like 4th place, 5th place, 6th place, somewhere in there. And Rasmussen is behind him. And Christian Rasmussen is trying to pass him. And because of some reasons that I'll get to later, there was a lot of rubber on the track, and the groove was really wide. So Rasmussen is trying to pass low. He's trying to pass high, and it's just really aggressive blocking. And then Power fades high, but Rasmussen kind of lunges in, and Rasmussen got a wing on him. He got a foothold in. And you could make the argument that maybe Rasmussen should have backed off. But as Will Power stated, his spotter should have told him that Rasmussen had a wing in, as he put it. Because he just kept going up and up and up the track until he squeezed Christian Rasmussen. And Rasmussen hit the wall pretty square, but he smoked pretty hard. Damaged both the outside tires on his right side of his car, damaged the floor, damaged the wing. I guess Rasmussen's car had a bent rear lower suspension link, a bent toe link. He had a bent link on the front of the car. The end fence was pretty messed up, and it just, it messed up his car. Power has shown real contrition. He feels bad about how it happened, And he went to ECR and apologized for it just because, he could have left more room. But those two were driving really hard. And for Will Power, it was awesome to see because he's had so many struggles on the season. But I like that Will Power went over and apologized. He didn't just ignore it, pretend it didn't happen. He said, no. He owned it. It was his fault. Next, let's talk about Mick Schumacher. So, Mick Schumacher is a rookie driving for Rahal Letterman Lanigan. You all know that by now. He started third. He qualified third in an incredible qualifying attempt. He started first in qualifying on Friday. Drove the wheels off that car in qualifying. Started the race in third Saturday, and then he just generally faded away in the race. There were a couple of pit mistakes, and he made some mistakes, but it was one of those where he was good single lap, but over the course of the race, it wasn't going to work out. Either way, I'm really encouraged for Mick Schumacher. Now it'll be interesting to see what he does at Indianapolis. That's a whole other beast. But I'm quietly encouraged by Mick Schumacher's performance at Phoenix and how he held on himself in testing. I thought I like the kid. I think he's good. The last driver the next driver we're gonna talk about. We got one more after this, but the next driver we're talking about is Alex Palou, driving for Chip Ganassi. So Palou did not finish. He crashed on lap 21. He squeezed Rinus VeeKay and crashed out. Now, you could make an argument that VeeKay should have pulled out, which is true. But you can also make an argument that Palou should have given him more room. You can make that argument. It was definitely a racing incident. It wasn't anything malicious, but he just got too high, and then he squeezed Rinus VeeKay, and the two of them crashed. Now, Rinus VeeKay finished 5 laps down, but Alex Palou, he cracked up the front right suspension, but the wing was messed up. There was body damage. It was a hard hit. And I'll be honest, totally honest. When he crashed out, my first thought was, ding dong, the witch is dead. It's like, oh, we don't have to deal with the Spaniards so someone else can win. Because, man, I was just anticipating having a great race for 120 laps, and then Palou gets to the front and stays there. I knew, when the race started, I knew it was going to happen. But it's interestingly enough, I had a feeling after about 10 laps, I turned to my dad, and I said, I have a feeling that Palou is not going to finish the race. I was like, I just have a weird feeling, and then he didn't. And obviously I want him to finish the race. I want him to succeed, but I cannot deny the fact that I was a little happy that he wasn't involved because it meant that someone else was going to win. But it has certainly left the championship order mixed up. Man, sorry, I yawned there. I didn't think I was so tired today, but I am apparently very, very tired. Ultimately, I think Palou is going to win the championship, but it might just take him a while to get to the front, and he might not wrap it up ahead of the final race like he did last year. All right, and then the last driver I want to talk about is Romain Grosjean, and I'm only going to mention him a little bit because he didn't even start, and they never really mentioned what happened to him, but I later found out that he had a clutch failure. Never even started the race. I guess he was having clutch problems most of Friday and Saturday, leading up to the race on Saturday. But, he just had a clutch failure and he never even started, which sucks. But I'm glad to see him back in the field, and I think he's going to do better than this going forward. But it was upsetting. I was like, oh man, bummer. But now moving on from just the drivers, let's talk about the race itself. So the undercut was powerful, as I mentioned. This was a tire race. It was not a fuel race. And I think that's better. Now on ovals, I know that there are those who are like, all of it is entertaining because driver skill and all that. But I think fuel saving is unbelievably boring. And how do I put this? I like a tire race. I like a race where it's about making the tires work and comers and goers and lots of tire dag. And now, not like road course where the tires don't last and you just want to get off the, but like a tire that you can race with. And it's about how you can utilize the grip you got on the tires. That's the kind of racing I really like from Indycar. And I thought this was a perfect example. This and like Gateway last year and Milwaukee 1 and 2. Nashville to a lesser extent. But I love that kind of race where it's like focus on going fast and making the tires work and not saving fuel, because saving fuel is so boring. Oh my God, it's so boring. Like St. Pete was just about get out front, stay and save fuel and don't make mistakes. And I hate that kind of racing. I find it supremely boring. All right. Other than the undercut, NASCAR running on the track during the weekend left a lot of rubber, and I think that really helped the track. As I said, the extra rubber, even though it was Goodyear rubber and not Firestone, the extra rubber on the track really widened out the first lane and allowed the second lane to be viable. And I'm so glad, because 8 years ago, when the last time IndyCar raced at Phoenix, like 10,000 people, less than 10,000 people showed up. It was a horrible race. It was horribly attended, and it was boring. It was just like you couldn't pass. So Joseph Newgarden got to the front and stayed there and just drove around behind the guy in lap traffic. So I was glad to see what the effect NASCAR had, not only on the crowd but also the track conditions. I thought that was great. Speaking of the crowd, I guess this was supposedly double the average Saturday for the Phoenix Cup weekend, which is awesome. That speaks to what IndyCar was able to do. And I thought the race was incredible, so I would not be surprised if NASCAR and Fox want IndyCar to be back, But I hope they go back. I hope they go back so bad, because Phoenix was designed to be driven by Indy cars decades and decades, like going back before CART, before USAC, like back in the AAA era, like even before that. The track is very old, and it was always designed to be driven by Indy cars, and Indy cars deserve to drive on oval. There are a couple of boxes that have to be checked every year for an IndyCar season. You got to drive at Long Beach, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Milwaukee, Phoenix, Portland. Like, I think if you do those 5, you're hitting the traditional CART series boxes. Road America is another one you could throw in there, and Detroit is another one you could throw in there. But those races, but especially like Phoenix, Milwaukee, Indianapolis, Long Beach. And Phoenix is one that, because IndyCar struggles to promote ovals, it went the way of the dodo bird. But I'm hoping that NASCAR will agree that this is something that's got to keep happening, and they'll continue to schedule the Phoenix race in the spring and like late winter, so that IndyCar can continue scheduling it, because this was only possible because Fox, the broadcaster, owns part of the series and was broadcasting the NASCAR race, so they could help set the whole thing in motion. And I really, 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 really hope that they do it again. And and if Phoenix isn't possible next year, Kansas Motor Speedway. Kansas Motor Speedway was another track that was designed to have shallower banking, which it was wide, and it had like 15-degree banking, which suited IndyCars more. And after the unification post-split, IndyCar put on a series of great races at Kansas. You people should look up those races. They're on YouTube. The Kansas IndyCar races were always a banger. You had wide open racing, lots of passing, high speeds. It's an intermediate track, so it's it would be super speedway aero kits, not short oval. But either way, I would love that. Now, other than Kansas, you've obviously got Dover. Not going to happen. The Indy Racing League drove at Dover back in 97, 98, 99, and those races were crash fests. They were boring. It's a 1 mile oval made with concrete for the surface, and it's very, very steep. And it was just it was a crash fest. It was one groove, very boring. So no. But if not Dover, you've also got like Watkins Glen, Las Vegas, Atlanta. Atlanta, I'll talk about Las Vegas in a sec, but Atlanta is interesting because the Indy Racing League drove at Atlanta Motor Speedway 3 times, 1997, 1998, 1999. And those races back then, they were called like, one was called like the Visionaire 500, and another one was called like the Atlanta 500 Classic, or something like that. And they were all 500-kilometer oval races back in the IRL days. Good races. I mean, the track, it's like Texas or Charlotte Motor Speedway. It's, very racy. But since then, Atlanta has been reprofiled, and now it's got like 35-degree progressive banking that's like barely 50 feet wide. So while it would probably be racy as heck, it's probably not safe for Indy cars because it's super narrow and super high banking, like higher banking than any other track IndyCar has ever driven on, ever. Like, ever. Honestly, it would probably be like the Firestone Firehawk 600, the kart race at Texas Motor Speedway, that was supposed to happen in 2001, where it's like too many G-forces, because that much banking, you'd be flat the whole way, and crashes would be nuts, so it's probably not Atlanta. Now, I mentioned Las Vegas. Now, the biggest reason why you don't go back to Las Vegas is because Dan Wheldon was killed at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and there's, Dario Franchitti was his friend, and he's still around, and Tony Kanaan is running the McLaren IndyCar team, and he was Dan Wheldon's best friend, and the hurt still is around, and guys like T. Bell knew Dan Wheldon, and James Hinchcliffe knew him a little bit. So, and I mean, everyone loved Dan Wheldon, so there's a lot of bad feelings and hurt and pain and fear about that place. I think because these are no longer the most dangerous cars that the series has had since the 70s ended, the fact that they're not driving those cars anymore is a good thing, and the fact that the cars are much safer now, and there won't be like 37 cars in the field because everyone is racing the old IR05 chassis that no one's going to be using anymore. All those things, and there's not as much downforce, not pack racing, all of the differences that there are between current IndyCar and the IZOD IndyCar series, as it was called back then. In spite of all of that, part of me thinks that, how do I put this? I would love to see IndyCars at Las Vegas because I think they'd put on a good race. But at the same time, I fully understand that they're never, ever, 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 ever going to do it because, like, the crash killed a man, yes, but it ended Paul Tracy's career, Thomas Schechter's career, Danica Patrick left for NASCAR. It was one of the most horrifying crashes IndyCar has seen ever. Right up there with Swede Savage and Dave McDonald and some of the all of the really, really awful ones from the 60s and 70s. The worst ones you can think of from yesterday, it was that bad. Now, it wasn't like Tony Renna bad, but we don't talk about Tony Renna. But so they'll never go back. I would love it though. But another one that's interesting is Watkins Glen. So IndyCars have driven at Watkins Glen before. There's talk that the Glen would love to have him, but it would have to work financially. And obviously, they wouldn't be running the Grand Prix circuit. They'd be running the shorter NASCAR circuit, which is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 9 corners versus like 12 or 13 corners. It's much less technical, and it's a lot faster and more sweeping and more undulating. But I worry that not only would IndyCar put on a really, really, really boring show because it's a road course and Palou would win, but they'd be so much faster than NASCAR that it would kind of because like it's one thing on an oval when obviously the Indy cars are going to be faster, but the differences are much closer on an oval. Whereas on a road course, it would probably be pretty stark how much slower they are. versus an open wheel car with wings and downforce and 750 horsepower and all that. So, but I would love to see it because, IndyCar is desperately lacking a race in the Northeast. They got the Southwest, they've got the Northwest, they've got the Southeast, the Midwest. They got all the regions covered. They got Texas covered. They got Southern East Coast covered, but they don't have anything for the Northeast, and I think that's a very underserved media market. And I mean, it's Watkins Glen. It's one of the great race courses in America. But ultimately, if it does happen again, I think it's going to be Phoenix again, which would be freaking fantastic. Moving away from this race, let's talk about some of the teams. So I thought ECR and Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, I think it's obvious that they've both made serious strides on short oval pace. And I guess from Graham Rahal, it isn't so much that the car works better, it's that they can feel the car now. Because the drivers, a lot of them are driving a lot on feel. And I guess the Rahal damper program, the cars were just really vague. You couldn't really tell what the back end was doing based on, the feel in your butt. So it's one of these things where now that they can kind of feel what's happening on track, even if they're not faster, they can make corrections and they can drive with more confidence and they can set the car up better versus having to just kind of guess, So Rahal, I thought they've made a huge stride. I mean, Mick Schumacher and Graham Rahal were well inside the top 10 after qualifying. And ECR had incredible pace on the short ovals. All of this, I think, leads me to believe that I think these two teams could be sneaky contenders at Indianapolis this year. Do I think they're going to win? No, I don't think either of these teams is going to win. But, I would not be surprised if Graham Rahal is kind of sneaky in the hunt in the middle of the race at the 500, or if Christian Rasmussen of ECR was just very much in front. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I think these two teams have made a huge step forward. Now, it remains to be seen what their road course pace is like. I mean, they were not great at St. Pete, but that's a street course. But I think these two teams might be someone you got to pay attention for in the month of May. Last thing I want to talk about, the Andretti cars. So while the Andretti cars have had issues with crashing and the pit issues are remaining and everything, I thought the Andretti cars look fast on the year. Through two races, they haven't been super sexy, but the cars just look kind of like they just kind of get on with it, They look sneaky fast. So I'm those three teams are kind of dark horses for me. I think they're very much, those are teams to look out for as we get closer to the month of May. Now, next week, the Indy cars are going to be at Arlington, Texas, driving around the AT&T Stadium and the ballpark where the Texas Rangers play for the, what's it? I honestly don't remember what it's called, but it's the Grand Prix of Arlington, the something Grand Prix of Arlington. And I guess they're going to go to they're going to go to individual qualifying for the top 6. So you'll get one run, one at a time to, kind of heighten the drama. I guess they're trying it out. It's a brand new course, lots of celebrities, lots of advertising, lots of involvement. I just really hope the race is good, but that'll be for next week. Still working on my book, so I'm thinking once, eventually I'm going to start posting some kind of videos, behind the scenes stuff on the making of a book and my experiences on that. I don't know when those are going to come out, but I'll start making those eventually, so you guys can kind of get a view into the creative process. I'm still in revisions for my book, but, look for that for any of you who are interested in how the money is made, so to speak, even though I don't make a dime from any of this stuff. Either way, I'll be covering IndyCar at Arlington. If there's anything football related, I'll probably cover that too. I don't know. Depends on what, is a bigger story. Yeah. So for those of you watching on YouTube, please consider subscribing, hit the bell icon to get notifications, and comment to feed the algorithms to help tell YouTube's algorithm to show other people my video. For those of you listening on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and everywhere else that podcasts are available, thank you. Please share the word, tell your friends and family, so we can help the podcast grow. All right, my name is H. James K. Thank y'all for tuning in. Until next time.